Do you know how to create smooth head turns in Adobe Character Animator? No. Of course you don't. This software doesn't make any sense. But do you want to learn how? Follow along as I rig a head puppet from the ground up, or skip right to the end where I share a killer technique to achieve smooth head turns, or any turns for that matter, in Adobe Character Animator 2023. This is a beginner to intermediate lesson, so a little knowledge of the program is helpful before jumping in. Grab the puppet file from the link in the description, or follow along using a rig of your own. Let's do it. Alright, so I'm over here in Adobe Character Animator. I already set up this character to do the smooth head turn, and yeah, I'm just going to kind of quickly show you here. This was really fast to set up. I'm going to set up the full facial rig in real time here, or close to real time, so you can kind of see how it goes. And very important, I just wanted to kind of go over the character here in Photoshop as well. And you can see here I've got a parent folder for the entire head, and then I have a lot of the elements are in their own folders. So you can see here with the eye, I've stacked the eyebrows, the eyelids, pupils, eyeballs all in one folder, so that I can move them easily within that folder rather than having to move the individual parts. And that will come in handy later. There's a few triggerable actions here, but this is a very, very quick one. It doesn't have a full mouth set. These are just a couple poses that I have, and some hair and ears, creating the parallax effect. So that is the character file, which you can download in the link below. And we will start a brand new file here to get this up and running. So we'll call this Chibi Head Turn. And first things first, just going to import that file. You can double click on it to open it up. And you'll notice right off the bat, some of these have little crowns next to them. When you're naming your files in Photoshop, when you're naming your layers, if you want independent layers, you can add a plus sign, and that will automatically create an independent layer when you load it into Character Animator. I haven't done that for all of them, but you know, I do it for the pupils usually just by default. We're going to want to do that for all the layers that we want to move in the parallax, as well as, you know, things like the pupils, which will move anyway. So to start out, I'm going to just kind of set up this rig with triggers. The brows, there's only one eyebrow that I have here. So this will be the right eyebrow. We can tag anything that is not tagged, and that's a good starting point. And then for the mouths, I do have these named as their different visemes, or visemes, how do you pronounce it? I don't know. But I don't need this to work like a talking rig, so I may actually just turn this mouth into I'll deselect it and turn it into a trigger by dragging it here and then creating a swap set. That way I can manually select any of the mouths that I want to use. I would like the neutral one to be the default, so I'm going to just check there. And I want all of them to be latches, so all that means is when I click on it, it will stay put until I click it again. I don't necessarily need the head shape to be tagged. I can actually tag this main folder as the head, because that's what's going to move everything with my facial movements. I know I want the bangs, the nose, headline, right eye, left eye, mouth, ears, and hair to all move independently. So I'm going to just click this little crown icon, and that will separate them from the rest of these. And now I can go ahead and create switch layers or swap layers for all of the different things that need it. So the nose here will get one. The headline is simply a line that goes around the head. giving it the illusion of a hand drawing, but if I get rid of it, you can see it's literally just a line. That's all. Right eye has brows, eyelids. I do have a few triggers in here, so I'm actually going to create this as a swap set by dragging it to create the swap set. And now what I'm going to do is actually match the other side by dragging each individual layer to its corresponding one for the other eye. This way they act together when I trigger them. And I want the normal eye line to be the default, so I'm just going to select default there. I'll make them all latch for now, and we'll see if we need to change that. In each pupil, I have this layer called Twinkle. I actually didn't even name it on this side by accident, but they are both, if you open them up, you can see it's just 3 layers. It's a trigger that adds a little twinkle to the eye. It's something very, very simple, but it gives it a cool effect. So I'm gonna add over here in behaviors, the cycle layers behavior, and I only want that to go in a loop. So I'm going to have it go continuously, and I will not select anything else here. I just want to select one of them. I'll drag it in here to create a trigger, and then I will select the other and link it by dragging it over. And now I'll set it to latch. I actually want to change this too. We'll make this the default. And make all the noses latch layers. Then I can close these for now and take all the layers that I want to move with the parallax, and I'm going to add the behavior transform to each of them. So holding Control or Command on iMac can select all these layers, go down here to behaviors, and add the transform behavior. Now you'll see if you select your full puppet, there is also transform already on your puppet. This will affect the parent folder, oops, but it won't affect any of the children. So when we add this effect to all of the children here, they will be able to be transformed independently using this behavior. I'm going to create a new scene. We'll call this head turn. And I have it set. I'm going to actually make this a square. And it's set at 12 frames per second. I'll put it at 24 for now. This sort of character actually looks really good at 12 frames per second, but for now, let's keep it at 24. It operates the best in that. So you can see here, character is looking okay. Always the first thing that I do is shut off the eye gaze camera input. That works horrible. It's a terrible default. I wish Adobe would change it, but I always will switch right over to the keyboard input. And by adding that keyboard input, now I can use the arrow keys on the keyboard to move the eyes around. And they're not moving properly. So we're gonna do a couple things, see if we can't fix it. I'm gonna go up to the puppet and we'll push that here. The lip sync, I don't even need that on right now, but I'm gonna make some adjustments to face and also to transform at some point. So the head position strength is really, really strong. I don't need it that high, so set it at 24. Calibrate here so we recenter. Looks pretty good. I wear glasses, so a lot of the eye movements that I do are not really useful as far as like squints and stuff. It is fairly useful for some people, but the reflections in my glasses really make things go wacky, so I shut off the eyelid strength. But eyebrow strength, it'll still actually work pretty well. I don't want the eyebrows to move together. Shut off the parallax. Can shut these off. Head scale strength, I don't need that really high, maybe 12%. And the tilt will go down to like 25 also. Just pretty subtle. A little bit of movement here is all I want. And calibrate, that looks pretty good. Now I can go ahead and, if you don't have a control panel in your record window, all you need to do is go up to window and you can just click on controls and it'll add one in there. It gives you the option to automatically generate controls. This will take any trigger or swap set that you have here and it'll automatically place it out in a visualized control panel, which is super useful. So we do that, and now I can see all the different mouths that I can select from, which is great. Looks really good. Different noses, cool. Different eyes, great. And that twinkle effect I mentioned. So everything appears to be working well. One thing I do have to do is create clipping masks for the hair and the eyes. So I'm going to jump back into the rig mode to do that. So dropping down the left and the right eye, basically I want the eyelids, the pupil, main folder here, pupil, and the eyeball to all be in one clipping mask. So now I can go up to the pupil and create a clipping mask, and then I can go up to eyelids and I should be able to do the same thing. Okay, and now what that's going to do is eyelids and the right pupil will both be clipped to the eyeball shape. All right, we'll do the same thing with the left eye. Puppet, create clipping mask, eyelids, create clipping mask, and you can also do Control-Alt-G as a hotkey there. The hair mask, okay, that's there. So I want to clip that to the head shape here. And I actually want that to be independent also, and I don't want the headline to be independent, so I screwed up there. But yep, we're going to create a clipping mask for that. And that should be good. Jump back over here, and now everything seems to be moving well. Awesome. All right, that's a great start to this particular character. So now what I want to do really quickly, I want to add some physics to the hair. I'm going to do that by jumping over here to rig mode again. I'm going to go up to the bangs here, and I'll just add this little dangle tool. I'm going to grab that and just add a dangle in the hair. That's going to flop a little bit when the hair moves. Just add one on either side. And we'll do the same thing down here with the hair. And I'll actually move the origin point up for the hair. And going back to the main folder, chibi turn here, I'm going to move the head's pivot point down to where the neck might be, so it moves a little more realistically. Okay, that's cool. You just get a little extra added animation there, free of charge. Very cool thing to have. So now that all that is set up, we have a face that is working, and it looks nice. I gotta tag that other eyebrow here so they can move together. Okay. And I guess I'm gonna make those brows independent also so they don't pull at the eyeball underneath. Okay, that looks good. I can actually add a little more strength to that eyebrow. And because I only have the one eyebrow, rather than swapping between, I shut off move eyebrows together. When you move them together, it looks a lot more uniform and clean, but you can't do things like this. And the bangs here cover everything anyway, but that's a good general rule of thumb, is to deselect that if you'd like to do any sort of movements with your eyebrows recorded. So now the moment you've all been waiting for. And in order to do that, we'll go over to the control panel here, select layout, and you can see that a dotted line appears around all of these buttons here. This gives you the option to move things around and also to just basically delete stuff that you don't need. With these dotted lines, you also get dotted lines in your puppet behaviors. And all that does is it gives you an option to add a controller into this control panel for any one of the parameters. I typically like to add an overall transform function for position X, position Y, and the scale of a character. I will also sometimes add an X scale so I can flip the character. I'll get into that in a different tutorial, more than likely. But those three there give me the option to move the head significantly, left, right, up, down, and change your scale. So very useful to have, and it allows you to keyframe it rather than relying on the motion of your camera, which is a little bit wonkier. So in the layout section, if you want to change any of these parameters, for example, I don't want it to go smaller than 0, and I don't want it to go larger than 100%. So like that is good. Now you can kind of scale up and down. And we're going to do that same thing now for all the parameters on these extra things. And this is where it gets kind of tedious. It's a little time consuming. However, it's fairly easy to do, and the results are totally worth it, I think, in the long run. So in the layout panel here, I'm just going to scroll down and open up all of these behaviors. And what I'm going to do is go parameter by parameter. So I'm going to do the X position to one side, right? X position to the left side, and then a Y position just up. So we'll grab every single X position and just go in order down here. So there's bangs, ears, hair, left eye, mouth, nose, right eye. So that's so far a total of 7 layers. And we're going to link them all together so they're controlled by one controller. So I'm going to go back into perform mode now, and basically these 3 here, I don't want to touch them. These are just the overall transform functions, but these 7 are for the individual layers. You can go in to layout mode, select each one, and rename it. And I highly recommend that if you're a person who likes to have things organized, because this does get fairly confusing when you have a lot of these out and about. But for the sake of speed, I'm not going to do that right now. So all I need to do is I'm going to have the character look to the screen's right, so it would be technically a left look with the X position. So I'm going to just move everything to where it appears to look correct. And this is going to be setting this is going to set the range of movement here. Now, we don't need to worry about some of the elements sticking out. That is kind of, we're going to fix that after. But yeah, so this looks pretty good for a look to the right. Once that's done, we can go to layout and pay close attention up here to this gray area. This is showing the position where we've moved it to, and we're going to want to set that as the limit over here. So we're going to do 0 down the board for the first number. That way the basis for every one of these sliders is going to be 0, the center position. And then I'm going to change the end number to the number I see in the upper left here. So for This one, which is the bangs, I believe, it's 137 pixels over. This one here is -46 for the ears. And that's how it creates the parallax, by moving things around like that. -80, 125, 148, 194, 342. Now that that is done, I'm going to select all 7 of them, right click, and select group. And that's going to create one master controller that controls all of those, and you'll see that it moves them to their maximum position. So it just basically remaps everything to this main controller's 0 to 100. So if I go over to perform here, you can see everything moves to the right, super smooth. That's exactly what we want. And now I can actually rename this. This is going to be X position, let's say right. And we simply repeat these steps for the X position to the left and the Y position. So I'm going to kind of speed through these, but I do want to actually make a note here. You can move your character around, and it will still, it doesn't screw things up. So because they're all in the proper hierarchy, it works out really well. Okay. So we'll set these back to 0 and put that back to 0. Go to layout and do it all over again. X position number 2. Okay, so I've got all 7 of these here now, and I'm going to do the same thing, but just move everything to the left side. I'm just trying to do this relatively quickly, so don't expect perfection, but you can achieve a really professional result if you take the time to tweak everything the way that you want it. That all looks fine. It's acceptable. Zero out the minimum range. Now the reason that I'm doing 2 different sliders for left and right rather than just using one slider and flipping the results is because with things like the eyes and ears, they're not gonna be symmetrical on either side. So it will throw off the original position of the eyes, for example, if you put them all on one slider. So having this extra step for both sides is kind of a necessary evil if you want your character to look very specific to the way you've designed it. Group, rename X position left, and let me just test this out. That looks good. So you can see here we've got a character that can move back and forth. Awesome. Before I do the Y, let me jump over here to the rig, and I just want to clip the eyes. I'll basically clip all this stuff to the head shape, that way nothing is jumping out of the head like this. Minimize all of these, and the bangs will stay on the outside, the nose can, and the headline too. So we'll just select the mouth, create a clipping mask, left eye, and right eye. That should solve the issues there. Cool. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the Y position for all of these. Okay, all set with the Y position. Really just going to work out the same all over again. So drag these where they need to go, and I think you can tell as you go through doing something like this that you can also add other parameters to it to achieve more realistic results. For example, let's say you wanted the eyes to shrink a little bit as they went up and down. You could also pair the scale Y along with the Y position to shrink everything down and give that effect of it being parallax. I highly recommend doing that. It's just every parameter you add kind of like slows things down a little bit, adds to the processing taking a little bit longer. So I'm just trying to keep this as simple as possible. And you don't necessarily need it. It's just nice to have for certain rigs that you want a little more control over. You can pair those things, those parameters to it. So I don't know, that looks kind of weird. That looks kind of weird, but let's do it. That looks okay. All right. Zero out the minimum range. Drag this over here, and now we can go to pose here. Boom. So you can see here, this does look a little bit weird. The chin gets really big. If I wanted to fix that, I could add a transform to the head shape layer and shrink that as it goes up. I'm not going to do that right now, but that would be one solution. Keeping in mind, of course, that the line is on a separate layer, so I would need to apply that same transform to the line as well, but it can be done and it's pretty easy. I'm just not going to do it right now. So you've got all of this set up and now you want to animate with it. You can take this and run with it, and that's pretty much all you need to get started. However, there is one caveat to using this method, and that is when you use the slider, you can see all the parameters on here that it's controlling, and when you record with it, it actually records every one of those parameters individually, which, if you're somebody who does multiple takes, that makes for a really huge timeline. I'm going to give you an example right now. So I'm going to arm these sliders for recording, and I'll just press record to show you what I'm talking about. Something simple there. But now you look on your screen and holy moly, that's a lot of parameters that it's putting in there. If you do, every time you do this, it's going to add all of these takes to your timeline, and that can really bog you down when you're doing longer animations. So one workaround that I actually like quite a bit, and I use this sort of thing all the time to try to get like smoother motions faster, rather than trying to do like a live take with these sliders, which can be rather difficult. What I'll do is record a replay of each of the head turns and turn that into a trigger. It's a pretty quick process and pretty painless. So in order to do that, first of all, let me delete this here. We just recorded, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to shut off the Y position here, and I'm just going to do a recording of the left and the right turn. And I would like for this turn to happen pretty fast, let's say half a second. So I'm just going to do like a 12 frame kind of thing. So I'm going to take the X position here, turn it all the way to where I want it at the full extreme. And then I'm going to press Control and the number 1. You can also go up to timeline here and select record 1 frame take, but the hotkey is the fastest way to do this, and that's Control 1. What that's going to do is it's going to create a keyframe for all of those parameters. And then if you select one of them, grab this little section of the bar here and drag it out. You can drag it out to a full 12 seconds. Or 12 frames rather, half of a second. Now, selecting either end, but it makes sense in this case to grab the left side here and drag it over. This is going to ease into this particular keyframe. So no matter what your position the head is in, when these keyframes are played, it's going to slowly move in that direction. Pretty cool. So I can right click, create, replay, and trigger. This is a very useful feature for Character Animator, and I use it quite a lot. So now over here in replays, we have this cool little replay. I can actually delete these keyframes if I want. I don't need them anymore. And this will still play. It's all recorded into the program, and it all automatically created a trigger over here as well, which I will rename. Which direction was that actually? Let's see. It's turning to the right. Technically left, but whatever. I'm going to call it the right. So right turn. We'll set that to latch, which is also important here, and then I can drag this over to my control panel, and now I have a button that does the exact same thing, which is pretty cool. So if I go to perform here, I can press that button. It is not latching, so I have to actually put this to stop sustain replay. So I apologize. Sustain replay is what we need, because then when you press it, it will hold its position until you press the button again. So that's really cool because you still have all the functionality of the mouth, and it can turn. This is where this sort of stuff is super useful. You don't need to make a bunch of different angles for the head. This works out really, really well. Cool. So now I'm going to do the same thing for the other side, and you'll see just the same exact process now. Turn to the left and Control 1 or Command 1 on Apple. Drag it out to 12th frame, drag this part over to ease it in, right click, create, replay, and trigger. Boom. Keep it at stop, sustain, replay. And I'm just going to rename this left turn. Also set it to latch, and I'm going to put it to the left of my right one. Now I can delete all these. You're dead to me. Test it out just to make sure. Looks good. Yes, left, right, camera 1, camera 2. There you go. Last but certainly not least will be the up and down. So I'm going to shut off or disarm the X position. I will arm the Y position. And there's my control panel. Now, if you wanted to add them to your original file, you can actually add images that you can use in these buttons. And one step further here, to make things even easier for you, create a swap set and just rename this head turns. Now I'll select those three and drag them into the head turn swap set. Don't need to do anything with the buttons here, but essentially what that's going to do now is, say I'm recording, I'm going to disarm the Y position here. I won't need these again for the most part, unless I need a very specific look where, let's say, it's looking up and to the right, or if I need something like that, I would probably manually do it. But if it's just an extreme position, I can use these buttons. So deselecting or disarming those, I'm going to make sure that triggers is armed, which it is. And now I can go to record, have it look that way. And now if I stop here, I end up with a head turn layer here. And I can actually change the head turns from inside this layer. I don't need to press record again to do that. You can select your layer and go to edit, split, or you can use the hotkey, which is Control or Command Shift and D. So doing that, Control Shift D, it's going to split it, and let's say we want it to turn right, then turn left again, then turn right. You get the point. This makes it really, really easy, and it's super clean when you're recording. You just drag that to the length of your clip, and you can make as many head turns as you want at the exact position that you want it to happen in your animation. And that's that. Hope y'all enjoyed this. Hope you make some cool stuff with it, and if you do, let me know. Happy animating.